Welcome back, everyone, to another explainer here on Decode Healthcare with Harshal. I am absolutely thrilled to have you with us today. If you tuned in for part 26, you know we tackled the hard and fast rule against duplicate codes, learning exactly how to keep our claims completely uncluttered. Well, today we're stepping into some seriously high-stakes territory. We're diving headfirst into Section IB13 of the CMS official guidelines, which is all about laterality. We are going to master the absolute, non-negotiable rules of left, right, and bilateral coding so you never, ever lose revenue on paired organs or body structures again.
So I really want you to ask yourself right now, are you losing revenue on paired organs? I know, it sounds like such a simple concept, right? Left arm, right arm. Left kidney, right kidney. But honestly, getting laterality wrong on your claims is one of the absolute fastest ways to trigger an audit or just get a complete flat-out front-end rejection. Insurance payers are incredibly aggressive about this because laterality defines the exact scope of the disorder. It proves the medical necessity of the entire procedure. If your documentation and your codes don't perfectly align on which side of the body you're actually treating, your claim is literally as good as dead.
Okay, let's dive into this authoritative three-law framework we've derived strictly from the CMS guidelines. We'll be looking at Law 1, the bilateral code command, Law 2, the split code workaround, and finally, Law 3, the unspecified audit trap.
Let's kick things off with Law number 1, the bilateral code command. So a bilateral condition simply means you've got an issue happening on both sides of paired organs or structures. Think about a patient having cataracts in both eyes or osteoarthritis in both knees. The CMS guidelines are incredibly strict here. If a patient has a condition on both sides and the tabular list provides a specific code ending that literally means bilateral, you absolutely must choose it. You don't get to play mix and match and build your own code combination when CMS has already handed you a pre-packaged bilateral option.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why knowing this rule is so crucial. Imagine trying to slide two separate codes onto a claim form, one for the left eye, one for the right. If a single bilateral code actually exists in a manual, the payer's system is going to instantly hit the brakes and block those two separate codes. Submitting separate left and right codes when a combined bilateral code is available isn't just a minor mistake, it's a massive compliance error. You have to use that single specific bilateral code.
Now you might be wondering, how do time and treatment affect all of this? This brings us to the nuance of subsequent encounters. Let's say a patient comes in for an initial encounter with cataracts in both eyes. Easy enough, you assign their bilateral code. But what happens at the next encounter, after they've had a successful surgery on just the right eye? While the CMS guidelines state that if one side has been successfully treated and the condition is basically gone on that side, you drop the bilateral code. You now assign the appropriate unilateral code for the side where the condition still exists. In this specific case, the left eye. However, if the treatment on that first side didn't completely fix the issue, you've got to keep using that bilateral code. It's actually a really brilliant, logical way to track the patient's exact clinical status over time.
Moving right along to Section 2, Law number 2, the split code workaround.
So what on earth do you do when a patient clearly has a bilateral condition, let's say an issue in both of their shoulders, but you're flipping through the tabular list and the codebook has absolutely no bilateral option? The manual only gives you a code for the right side and a separate code for the left side. What's your next move?
Let's see how this builds, because when there is no single bilateral code provided by the classification, CMS requires you to manually split the condition to build a proper claim. Step 1, you report the specific right side code on line 1. Step 2, you report the specific left side code on line 2. You are quite literally building the bilateral picture line by line to satisfy the payer's strict requirement for laterality.
I cannot emphasize this enough, guys. If there is no bilateral code, you must report both the left and right codes separately. You never, ever just pick one side to represent the whole shebang, and you absolutely never throw your hands up and use an unspecified code when you know for a fact that both sides are affected. Use the tools provided to paint a totally accurate bilateral picture.
Which brings us to our final section, Law number 3, the unspecified audit trap.
Now, what's really interesting about this is this direct quote straight from the CMS ICD-10 CM official guidelines. It says codes for unspecified side should rarely be used. In the coding world, that unspecified laterality digit is usually a 9. And let me tell you, insurance algorithms are aggressively hunting for it. They track and target these unspecified codes like you wouldn't believe. And why is that? Because if a surgeon operates on a knee or a doctor is treating a patient's ear, they should obviously know which side they just treated.
If an unspecified code hits a payer firewall, it's almost guaranteed to trigger a massive red flashing alert reading, "Denied lacks lateral specificity." It is hands down one of the most common targets for front-end claim rejections. It basically screams to the auditor that either the documentation is incredibly sloppy or the coder just didn't bother to read it.
But CMS actually gives you a rescue plan before you fall into that trap. If the attending provider accidentally forgets to document the side, Section IB14 allows a very special exception for laterality. You can actually check the medical record documentation from other clinicians, we're talking nurses, dietitians, physical therapists, to determine the affected side. So if the nurse notes it was the left leg, you can legally code the left leg. Now, if there is conflicting documentation, say the nurse says left but the physical therapist says right, you have to query the attending provider to get that clarified. You only ever default to the unspecified side code if the documentation is entirely missing and it is absolutely impossible to get clarification. It has to be your absolute last resort.
Speaking of pulling documentation, that brings up a wild question. Can you legally pull diagnostic codes from a dietitian's or a nurse's notes instead of the doctor's? The full answer is probably going to shock you, and we are going to break it all down in part 28 of our series covering section IB14. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, give this explainer a like, and share it with your colleagues so you never miss a critical rule. But before you go, I want to leave you with this provocative thought. Is a single unspecified digit quietly draining your practice's revenue right now? Go review your last 10 bilateral claims and find out for sure. Thanks so much for joining me on Decode Healthcare with Harshal, and I'll see you in the next one.